Two members of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. were fatally shot while leaving an event at a Jewish museum last night. To dive into this, we're joined by Rabbi Yaakov Menken, the executive vice president of the Coalition for Jewish Values. Rabbi Menken, thank you so much for joining us here. How are you and the Jewish community nearby, you're in Baltimore, very close by, reacting to this killing at the Israeli embassy?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And, it's a tough day, obviously. I know that there are those who are preparing a vigil tonight. Organization after organization is putting out statements deploring this senseless violence, but also calling out the anti-Semitism behind it.
The Trump administration revoked Harvard's ability to admit international students. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says they're holding the school accountable for, quote, fostering anti-Semitism on campus. Does this move set a tone of a changing culture addressing anti-Semitism across the U.S., particularly on college campuses?
Sadly, it's too late for these two embassy employees who were gunned down by a protester yelling "Free Palestine." But that really does send a message, and it's going to, if anything, only highlight how right the Trump administration is to be cracking down on universities where they've allowed students to be crossing the campus chanting "Free Palestine." Understand, Israel is the only free country in the Middle East. They are chanting for it to be free of Jews. Palestine is a European colonialist moniker, which has never meant anything other than to dissociate the Jews from Judea and the Israelites from Israel. It's obviously the Jewish homeland, and this nonsense that is now being taught on campus and chanted on campus sadly created this environment where a fellow claiming to care about what's going on in Gaza, actually the meeting that was held at the Jewish Museum was about providing aid, humanitarian aid, to civilians in Gaza. So how much does that fellow really care about aid? Not at all. He cared about killing Jews. And that's what Free Palestine and From the River to the Sea are all about.
Now, how much is social media contributing to this, with rhetoric like Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians being repeated across, we see, social media platforms?
The problem that exists on campus, of course, exists in social media as well. People can say whatever nonsense they want, and it gets printed and shared out just like anything else. It's all based on popularity contest and not on truth. Claiming that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza, not only is that an exercise in barbaric projection, because everybody knows that the charter of Hamas and the intent of Hamas is to commit genocide. The previous, now departed head of Hamas said, "We will rip down the border and rip their hearts from their bodies." It was all about barbarism and murder from the get-go. And so not only is this an engagement and projection, but it's also about these folks who are being accused of genocide are trying to rescue actual hostages being held by barbarians, the same barbarians who claim their desire is to commit genocide. So it's all falsehood. And if Hamas would simply release the hostages and disarm, guess what? That genocide that's going on would miraculously stop. But you don't hear these idiots calling for that. They just want to demonize Jews.
What needs to happen so that random acts of anti-Semitic violence stops?
Well, there's a whole series of things that have to happen. First of all, the institutions of higher learning actually have to go back to being worthy of the name. Today, you have woke indoctrination centers taking advantage of the fact that they have 300-year reputations of doing great education. No, I went to Princeton, and Princeton today is not what Princeton was. Harvard is certainly not what Harvard was. Columbia is definitely not. A Columbia degree just became an embarrassment. It's going to take a generation for them to recover. But honestly, until certain professors who have tenure, which is supposedly a permanent appointment, until certain professors with tenure are fired, anti-Semitism and indoctrination will still be taught on campus instead of actual education. That's a problem that's going to take a generation to fix.
I can only hope things turn around quickly. Rabbi Yaakov Menken, thank you very much for your perspective. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me as always.